Hello everyone, we're getting a lot of questions about us using an iPad for navigation, and we also get quite a few questions about the whole radio thing in the van. So I'm just going to produce this short video that explains how we go about navigating and all the trials and tribulations we've had with trying to get that to work properly. The MV200 used to have its own satellite navigation system, but the model that we purchased, Nissan decided to drop that, and they added something that didn't have any navigation capability. So we ended up swapping it for this new system. So I'm just going to boot up the radio's own navigation system. So we're currently by Selby Lake, and this is the inbuilt navigation system that comes with this Pioneer radio, and this is the AVIC 720. But having said that, I can't recommend the system because we found it to be unreliable on position of GPS, and quite often it loses position, particularly when you're under trees or in amongst tall buildings. And that's why you'll often see us navigating using a mobile phone. And we use this bracket, which is very, very good. It's called a CD slot mount. Now, unfortunately, you can only buy these mail order from cdslotmount.com, and they're made in the UK, and you can have, let me just put this in, it just slots into the CD holder, and then this little mount here can be unscrewed and taken off and put on any one of 3 positions. And so you can actually have, it will support 2 phones, obviously, if you put, because it comes with 2 brackets, so one on here, one on this end, and it will quite happily support 2 phones. Now I use the iPhone 12 Max at the moment, and what I find with this is that this bracket supports it fine in landscape mode, which I'll show you in a second, but it's not very good in portrait mode like that, because I find the phone is too heavy and it slides down eventually and comes, well, it's never come out, but it's constantly sliding down, and I always find myself adjusting it. So let's put the phone in there and show you that. Simple bracket, you pull one end out and then it will support it, and you can position it how you like. But we find it works best in landscape mode, and I like the way that you can angle the bracket either to the driver or the passenger, whoever's paying attention to the GPS. So that's what we use, and it works fine. We've never ever lost position using an iPhone, even under dense foliage or in towns. So that's why we've been using this. Now the trouble, of course, for me, I'm 62. My eyesight isn't as good as it used to be. I used to have perfect eyesight, but now I find I struggle to see a phone, unless, of course, I'm wearing these glasses. But I don't like doing this all the time because I can't wear these glasses to drive. I've tried bifocals, but I just can't get on with them. So I really wanted a bigger screen, and obviously I've often admired the screens you get in the Tesla, that massive display. So I thought I'd try an iPad, and it's turned out to be much easier than I thought to make use of an iPad in this van. So let's explain how we do that. Now, I'm a great believer in lashing things up as cheaply as possible to see if the concept works, and this is what we did for this trip. So if you look here, you'll see that I've got this space where the old system came out, the new system went in, and if you look down in the corner there, here, you can see that it's got quite a bit of depth to it, and that was enough to make a little shelf that the iPad can rest in. Now I know it looks an absolute mess, but it's a lash up at the moment, and there's bits of glue here where I've tried all sorts of different things, because I was trying to incorporate a microphone for recording us, and that's why there's a bit of glue on here. This is made out of that cheap plastic corrugated type board that modelers use to just mock things up. It's also exactly the same stuff that estate agents use for their for sale boards, because it's completely waterproof. So I cut a piece to fit in here that protruded just far enough so that I could rest an iPad in here, and I then cut another small strip which I hot glued onto the front edge to make a sort of lip that the iPad can rest against to stop it sliding forwards. And all I've done is, to make it blend in a little bit more, even though it still looks a mess, is wrapped it in some black tape. This little shelf is actually, if you come under here, you might just be able to see underneath some white tape. That's double-sided tape, and that is plenty strong enough, I've found, for holding even the biggest iPad, the iPad 12.9 Pro, rested in there and didn't move a millimeter. So let's show you it, how we actually use this. So we're using an iPad, I think this is an old 11-inch 9.7 inch iPad Pro, and the big difference about this one is, if I can show you on the edge of it, you see here it's a cellular version, so I could put a SIM in that, and there is no SIM in this. We use this connected to one of our iPhones, so that's how the iPad is getting the signal, so it can display a Google Maps. So as you can see, it just slots in, but for added security, this is what we do. We just got this piece of non-slip mat, and then we just put it down, so it's just in the edge like that, and then this sits in there and rests against the non-slip mat. And we've been over some really rough roads and it doesn't move an inch. The only time it looked like it was going to fall off, you will see in the next episode of our film, as we left the ferry in the Isle of Man. They've got a particularly rough road surface there, and everything was shaking to bits. But that's the only time it's ever moved. And then, of course, we plug it in, which way? Like this, to power it. And I press that cable in there, which gets it out of the way of the gear stick, and also helps it to stay in place as well. So that's how it's used. Now, the biggest advantage of using an iPad, of course, is the screen size. So I find I can see where we are and what's coming next very easily on something so large. Generally speaking, we use Google Maps, and you can, of course, it's in standard mode at the moment. You can go and use it in satellite mode if you want. So you can see at the moment we're in by Selby Reservoir on the Isle of Man, which is where we stayed last night. And then immediately you've got all the abilities that Google Maps can offer you for searching for things. Obviously, you need an internet signal for this to work. If you are low on data, then just use the default map, because that takes very little data at all. Using the satellite map can be really good for finding park-ups, but of course it uses a bit more data to download those satellite images. So whilst you've got this, you can use show me petrol stations. So there you are. You can see the power of using Google is we can now see petrol stations. So that one there. Get the directions to that. And then we'll start. And that's basically it using Google Maps, which is probably what we use most of the time. Now, you're not going to see us using the iPad very much on the Isle of Man, and the reason for that is quite simple. Distances are so short here that it's not even worth the effort of putting this thing up. This is, I would say, far more useful on longer trips. So on the Isle of Man, you'll actually see us using the phone, but that's just because we can't be bothered to put this up, only to go, a few hundred meters at times further up the road. All right, let's exit this. The other app we really like to use is Pocket Earth, and we like Pocket Earth because you can download the maps, and so you've got them offline. And of course, if we don't have any cell service, then we can still use this. Be aware though, to navigate using this, you need to have a cell service to calculate the route, but we don't bother with that when we haven't got a service. It will still find your location, and you can then just sort of use it as a position and navigate down the roads as you would with a more conventional map. It's plotting a route at the moment because we've got a cell service. And I think that's about it. So definitely can recommend using an iPad. We love it in comparison to using this Pioneer system. We don't recommend this Pioneer system to anybody at all. We've not had a good experience with it. That could be due to some installation. We just don't know. But now that we've got the iPad working, we much prefer to use this. Before you go to the trouble of buying a bracket or making one like we did, I recommend you go out for a drive and see if your iPad works in the car. I initially intended to use an iPad Pro 12.9 inch, which would have given us a much bigger screen as well. And it looked absolutely fantastic there. But when we actually tried it in the car on a journey, we found that it couldn't navigate properly. And I got a sneaky feeling that might be due to the fact that that particular iPad has not got a cellular slot. You can't put a SIM in it. And I don't know if it's still current, but I remember in the early days of iPads, the older ones without the SIM card didn't have a proper GPS in them. And that might be the problem. But that iPad that is it's probably about 1 or 2 years old. So I was a bit surprised when it didn't navigate. Anyway, so before you go to any trouble, test your iPad, make sure it works, and it works well on a proper journey. So drive somewhere where there's dense foliage or through a big town with tall buildings to make sure it actually can do the job you need it to do before going to any expense and trying to get a bracket. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope that answers all the questions about our radio and our iPad and our phones and the two major navigation apps that we use. If this video was useful to you in any way, then please give it a like and consider sharing it so that other people can enjoy the benefits of using an iPad in their MV200. The next video in the Isle of Man series will be released this Saturday.